Hello everybody, and welcome back once again to Gaza Goji YT, and today we are back with the second episode of the Great Hybrid War What If Edition. So without wasting any more time, let's begin. Starting off with our first what if scenario. What if the final 16 fought the original Indominus Rex? Basically, let's say that during the final tournament phase of the Great Hybrid War by Goji Center, the final 16 had to face the original Indominus Rex instead of the Indom 2.0 as the main boss. What would their rankings be in that case? Well, if I had to guess, it would probably be something like this. At the bottom of the ranking lies Volcano Venator, mainly due to his major lack in offensive capabilities, coupled with his shoulder spikes and long tail, which when considering his smaller size in comparison to the Indominus Rex, would make him prone to getting toppled around and manipulated. At the 15th spot we have Gigantotherium, who managed to outrank Volcano Venator courtesy of his slightly superior offensive capabilities, more stable frame, and lack of exploitable appendages. However, his size disadvantage against the Indominus, coupled with the fact that his primary weapon, his arms, won't do much against the Indominus, who managed to tank Ankylosaurus tail clubs to the face, in addition to getting thrown at buildings and walking it off with little to no damage, meaning that Gigantotherium won't be faring a lot better anyways. At the 14th spot we have Valkyriopteryx Hygeia, who managed to outrank the previous two courtesy of its elusive tactics, with its 10 recoils making it not only difficult to grab onto, but with its tridilation technique, it can quite easily disorient the Indominus as it counterattacks with that sharp beak, which would prove highly effective especially since the Indominus has been shown to fare rather poorly against cutting and piercing attacks. However, it still remains a glass cannon at the end of the day, and the moment the Indominus manages to get a good hold of it, it will be game over for the Valkyrie of Valhalla. At the 30th spot we have Arctosaurus Horridum, who despite being smaller than both Volcano Venator and Gigantotherium, makes up for it by being a much more refined combatant, faster, more agile, and much better equipped, with a thick crocodilian hide covered in bony scutes, strong jaws, and powerful bell-like arms with sharp claws. This thing is an absolute unit. Nevertheless, the fact that this thing is still a lot smaller than the Indominus, coupled with the fact that his armor would not be enough to protect him throughout the entire fight, makes it to where if he does get grabbed, it is curtains for the bear reptile. At the 12th spot we have Spinovenator Bellator, also known as Akira, who combines the best traits from Valkyriopteryx and Arctosaurus into one, a highly elusive, very fast and agile predator with strong arms tipped in sharp, powerful claws from the Maib that allow it to dig deep into the Indominus hide, coupled with heightened intelligence and stamina in order to perfectly master the hit-and-run tactic necessary in order to bring the Indominus Rex down via a battle of attrition. Nevertheless, its opponent is no walnut brain, and it will be able to figure out the strategy Akira is utilizing, and with its superior size and strength, it will be able to put pause to it and win the fight at the end. At the 11th spot we have Mundosaurus, whose size and mass allowed it to outrank all the previous entries, but that could have only taken it so far, as the Indominus Rex, known for her heightened intelligence and adaptability, would soon figure out that it's best not to attack the Universe Lizard from the front so as to not get stomped to death, and instead she would likely target its flanks with her highly durable skeletal frame, allowing her to survive a hit or two from that tail club, just what she needs in order to reach out to the legs and start crippling them with its sharp claws. And soon enough, the Mundosaurus would suffer from the same fate as the Apatosaurus herd from Jurassic World. At the 10th spot we have Theropod Rex. Now I know what you might be thinking, how did this thing manage to outrank Mundosaurus? And well, the answer is actually simple. Theropod Rex is to the Indominus Rex what the Predator Rex is to the Indom 2.0, as both are pretty much around the same size, both similar armor, large dexterous forelimbs tipped in sharp claws, and a deadly bite. They are pretty much equal to each other, but being only the 10th spot means that the 9 remaining hybrids are arguably the superior ones. At the 9th spot we have Monstrotherium Brutalis, who takes everything that Gigantotherium has and elevates it up a step. With much stronger armor, a larger corporal frame, greater reach, more dexterous forelimbs, and far better offensive capabilities, Monstrotherium will now have better chances of throwing the Indominus Rex around than the other way around. With far superior offensive capabilities to put its force behind, this thing would be able to kill the Indominus Rex more easily. However, its lack of speed and agility only puts him at 9th spot. At the 8th spot we have Predator Rex, who has everything that Monstertherium has, but more refined so as to not sacrifice speed and agility, which will be necessary to keep up with the Indominus Rex during the fight. However, the upcoming 7 opponents arguably turn this fight into an absolute slaughter. At the 7th spot, we have the Armored Titan, whose large size coupled with its powerful armor covering the entirety of her body makes it to where the Indominus Rex can't do anything to damage it. However, its offensive capability not being as effective as other combatants only puts it at 7th place. At the 6th spot, we have Armatus Gigantus, who sacrifices a bit of armor for added size, strength, and much better offense, with the Stagoro's tail weapon allowing it to one-shot the Indominus Rex with one well-placed hit. However, its lack of armor does act as its downfall, as its theropod adversary can exploit that to land a couple of good hits and even pull off a win by utilizing the same strategy she utilized against Mondosaurus or by targeting the neck. At the 5th spot, we have Aetherotitan Christus, who combines the best traits from Armatus Gigantus and the Armored Titan into one. With its large corporal frame, powerful tail weapon from Stegoros, and durable armor covering the legs, torso, and neck, there's little to nothing that the Indominus Rex can do to pull off a win. Kinda, as while the thick crocodilian hide covering the latter two body parts does make it a lot more difficult to dig into Behemoth, it is not an impossible feat, especially with the Indominus Rex's large sharp claws and superior speed and agility that allows it to reach out to these body parts in order to land a few good hits, all while making it difficult for Behemoth to land a tail strike in order to one-shot her, giving him the 5th place. At the 4th spot, we have Ferapelta, who managed to succeed at the very thing that Mondosaurus failed at, which is redeeming his base template of a dinosaur that fell victim to the Indominus Rex during the Jurassic World movie, that being the Ankylosaurus, as Ferapelta is a lot larger, wider, and lower to the ground than his in-gen counterpart, making it impossible for the devilish white theropod here to topple it down, especially since Ferapelta is a lot smarter in order to keep up with his strategies, or her strategies, sorry, as well as being much better equipped in terms of offense, with strong jaws and a nasal horn from Triceratops, as well as a much more effective tail weapon that does not rely on blunt force trauma, rather on cutting edges, as it slices through the Indominus Rex like hot knife through butter. However, Ferapelta's lack of speed and agility, which makes it reliant on the opponent coming to it, only puts it at 4th place. At the 3rd spot, we have Yamabrontorax Maximus, who managed to reach this spot due to the fact that he, similarly to the other 2 remaining hybrids, is a well-rounded combatant, making it very difficult for the Indominus Rex to pull off a win given how many disadvantages she has in this fight. However, she is still smarter, slightly faster and more agile, and has very deadly weapons of her own that can penetrate the Simonsuchus-like scales on the lower body of her opponent, preventing Gilgamesh from reaching a higher ranking. At the 2nd spot, we have Tyrannoceratops barbaricus, who has everything that Gilgamesh has, except with greater agility, armor, and large stabbing horns, which allow him to one-shot his opponent. The only thing that prevents him from getting the top spot is that the Indominus Rex, being bigger, stronger, and possibly smarter than the Indom 2.0, allows her to have better chances when grappling with Carano's horns in order to reach his flanks, by using the momentum of him trying to shake her off in order to reach out to those areas, which are still relatively armored, but she might still be capable of landing a few good hits in before Carano sweeps in and finishes her off. And at the top of the ranking lies Nemi-Phaganax Eversur. Granted his revamp form, because had we been using the Final 16 form, he would have probably fell short of this ranking by a long shot. The reason why I put Revamp Nemi as number 1 is not only because he is heavier, lower to the ground, and has a wider, more muscular frame than the Indominus Rex, which would make him very difficult to get toppled down, let alone getting grappled with, considering that his armor is comprised of Zul's spiky facial armor as well as the prickly denticles of a bramble shark, but also because he has the intelligence to keep up with the Indominus Rex in terms of strategy, the hip anatomy of the T-Rex, which allows him to keep up with the Indominus Rex in terms of agility despite her being a lot faster, as well as possessing some of the most devastating weapons amongst the Final 16, which should make light work of the Indominus Rex, destroying her in the matter of seconds. So, if the final tournament of the Great Hybrid War had the Indominus Rex as the final boss instead of the Indom 2.0, I would be betting on this guy to win. Now on to the second what if scenario. What if Surtur made it to the Sky Hybrid War? In case you don't know who Surtur is, make sure to go watch this video that I made about him on my YouTube channel. I'll leave a link in the description. But basically, Surtur is my most powerful Sky Hybrid that I only managed to create after the submission window for the Sky Hybrid War by Zane Reborn 2 was closed. And so I was never really able to submit him. But what if I managed to? And if I did, how would he fare? Well, let's find out. Let's start off with how would he fare against Maggie and Volt, and I think it's safe to say that Surtur would get himself an apex rank with ease, considering that he would have undoubtedly been one of the largest, if not the largest hybrid they would have faced up against at 500 kilograms. Watch the video in the link down below in order to figure out how he can still fly even at such a large size. Coupled with his powerful armor, large array of deadly weapons, surprising speed and agility, superb stamina, and heightened intelligence at both an analytical and strategic level, this makes it to where Maggie and Volt can do little to nothing against my hybrid. Now that Surtur has made it to the apex rank, in this completely hypothetical what-if scenario of course, he will now have to fight his way across the remaining hybrids that have also made it to this rank, starting with Hannibal the Sky Reaper, which is to Volt what Kamikaze is to Pike. Enough said there. Considering that Surtur has already demolished Volt and his tag team partner Maggie, he should have no problem dispatching this guy, especially considering that Hannibal didn't make it to Apex rank by dominating Team Mimic in a fight, but rather because Zane Reborn 2 felt very bad for indirectly mimicking this hybrid with his own creation Volt. Next up is Earthscrahe by Toxic P, arguably the mightiest bird hybrid to have ever been created, soaring through the skies with speed and grace before dominating his opponents with powerful kicks that put ostriches to shame in a spectacle of iridescent colors. A glamorous yet absolutely formidable unit. However, Surtur being nearly double the size, coupled with his powerful armor and muscular body, should be capable of tanking a good kick or two before snapping the mighty magpie in half with his powerful jaws, or potentially skewering her with his demonic horns. Up next we have Bessu, the first of 3 large Azdarkid hybrids that Surtur will have to go up against, weighing in at approximately 300 kilograms at max size, in addition to its thick, broad bill which can be used for bites and bone-cracking bashes, its strong talons from the Golden Eagle, and its porcupine quills for defense. This thing is no joke. However, Surtur still outclasses it in pretty much every single category, being bigger, stronger, having better armor that doesn't interfere with aerodynamics, coupled with its bat wings and tail feathers which help make up for the effects its size would have on its locomotive capacity, in addition to its wide array of weapons, heightened cognition and stamina, in addition to its sonic attack, which can stun Bessu and cause him to crash down to the ground, or disorient him long enough for Surtur to position himself comfortably in order to land the finishing blow, especially given that the Harpy Eagle in Surtur's genome, which also provides its strategic intelligence, is very well adapted for hunting down porcupines, and knows to be careful when handling their quills, in addition to the fact that the Hyacinth Macaw provides its internal mouthpieces which helps it bite down on quilled objects very safely with little to no damage. The next opponent Surtur will have to go up against is Javi, a member of Conciliatory Past's hybrid trifecta. Inspired by the Blue Windrunner from the Spec Evo series The Future is Wild, this large Azdarkid hybrid of greater renown comes in at a weight of 250 kilograms and is equipped with a large iron-coated beak from the Helicopterix additive, further reinforced by the palliated woodpecker for stronger pecs that can crack bone, in addition to the foot claws of a cassowary, the thick plumage of a wood pigeon, the sonic attack of a white bellbird, and most importantly, 3 sets of wings. A primary set of wings from the Hatzegopteryx, a secondary set of wings from Microraptor on the hind feet, and a vestigial set of wings on the neck from the Codaraptor. Now on paper this thing sounds ridiculously powerful, and it is. However, I do have a few nitpicks to cover. First, the flight mechanism feels rather iffy to me, considering that on one hand, pterosaurs had both of their forelimbs and hindlimbs attached to each other via a wing membrane, meaning that they would have had to be synchronized with each other in order to ensure effective flight. Whereas on the other hand, Microraptor, who not only was a glider instead of a flyer, also moved its limbs independently in order to ensure the maneuverability it is known for during movement. And so, combining these two different flight mechanisms with each other might prove conflicting, as the movement of the hind feet might mess with the overall wing structure, preventing Javi from flying effectively. 2. This very trait also affects the ability of leveraging its hind feet for combat, as the cassowary claws would have had a limited range of motion due to the wing members obstructing them, and had they been used, it would have severely affected the Javi's flight, potentially causing it to lose balance and crash to the ground. And 3. Note that Javi does not have any contributors such as the chicken in order to protect it from its own sonic attack. Yes, the fact that Javi does not utilize the acute hearing of the vampire bat does mean that it won't affect him by a wide margin, but that does not solve the problem, it simply prevents it from getting worse. However, Surtur, having larger vocal cords given its larger overall size, means it would likely be able to generate a stronger sonic screech that would still stun Javi and cause the same effects it would have caused on other opponents such as Bessu, and because of that you probably know how this fight is gonna end. And lastly, we have Valkyriotrix Hygeia from the final 16, which probably needs no further introduction, especially given that she's very similar to Bessu, and thus the fight would likely wind up in a similar manner to how it wound up with Bessu. And with that, we conclude the second episode of the Great Hybrid War What If Edition. I hope you enjoyed this video, and sorry if it turned out a bit too long. I just wanted to make it as interesting and entertaining as possible. And be sure to tune in next time for more hybrid content. So as always, thank you everybody so much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.